On this episode of If You Can, I'm speaking to Alex Gray, also known as Apollo, a former professional rugby player who became one of the first British athletes to take the leap to the NFL and is now one of the standout stars of Gladiators. On the surface, it looks like a story of strength, speed, power and performance. But behind that is something else. The pressure of starting again, the risk of leaving one career behind for another, and the reality of stepping into environments where nothing is guaranteed. He's gone from captaining England teams to chasing a completely different dream in a different sport to now performing in front of millions every week. So what does it really take to keep backing yourself when you're starting from scratch? And how do you stay grounded when everything around you just keeps getting bigger? Today we're going to find out. I'm Louis Alexander. Welcome to If You Can. Alex, it is great to see you again. Welcome to If You Can. It's been a few months since we first met, but I'm really excited to welcome you to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it was a romantic first date, wasn't it? We were at Cirque du Soleil together, man date.
We were set up by our publicist, Matt.
Yeah,
who's
shout
helping
out.
you now, who's supporting me, who's here with us today in the audience.
He's about to heckle us, I think, isn't he? So
there we go. Let's start strong. If You Can is a show dedicated to dream chasers, to risk takers, and to those who have actually done those things and are willing to share their advice. Now, in lots of interviews, you say, and I quote, you're on your third dream. Many people out there, maybe people listening, have never even achieved one dream. So what's your secret?
Look, it's been a long journey. I think the first thing I would say is, for anyone who looks at my life, my journey, my story, my Wikipedia page, all you kind of ever see is the highlights, right? All you see is the highest points of the mountaintops, the captaining England, the going to the NFL, being on Gladiators, right? But yeah, I guess I've been in the game now for 20 years, and one thing I can guarantee is that it's not always an upward trajectory. You know, you have setbacks that come around all the time. I've had some big ones in my career, but I think ultimately it's how do you stay ambitious? How do you manage that adversity, and how do you almost use it, I think, a little bit as jet fuel to propel you? And if I was to say what my secret was, that's probably it. It's being able to turn a disappointment into fuel, into something a little more special. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm proud of myself for doing throughout my career, and will hopefully continue to do.
So what inspired that first dream in the first place to chase professional sport in rugby?
So my uncle, when I got into rugby when I was about 5 or 6, and he was playing rugby just as it was going professionally, and he played for all the England teams growing up, etc. So I used to travel up and down the country on my mum's knee, watching her brother, my uncle, and then I just went down to the local club that he was playing. I was West Hartlepool at the time when they were in the top division, and I just got involved, and I just loved it. You know, I just love sport, but I loved all sports, and I think my advice to kids getting into sport is try it all. You know what I mean? I did everything. I did rugby, I did cricket, I did athletics, I did football, I did judo, karate, Muay Thai, I did gymnastics, which I think ultimately helped me become the athlete that I ended up becoming as a professional, because I had this great grounding in all different sports. I spent a lot of time outside as well, kicking my ball over into the neighbour's fence and having to jump over fences and get my ball back without them realising. So it was part of my life all the time. I loved being outside. I loved pretending I was a Power Ranger fighting evil villains outside with a stick as a sword and stuff. But yeah, it was just the love of it. You know, I love seeing my uncle play. That's what kind of sparked it, and ended up being quite good at it. You know, thanks to the parents for blessing me with the height and the speed and all the strength, all that type of stuff. Kind of won the genetic lottery a little bit there. But it was just a love for it. I just loved getting out there and playing, trying to do my best. And yeah, I found something that I really enjoyed doing. And then day after day, you keep stacking those up, those little efforts, those turning up. And I think I was also a kid who, my mum never had to force me to go and do anything. You know what I mean? I would be bugging her, can you take me here? Can you take me there? Can I do this? Can I do that? So I think it was just an ingrained thing, a love for sport that I had. And yeah, I was always doing it. My mum worked nights. She was a midwife for 30 odd years. So I think during the school holidays, she didn't want me, she wanted to get some sleep during the day. So she'd send me off to every single summer camp sports camp that she could, right? That was put on in the local area. So I did as many sports as I could as a kid, and I just loved it. Yeah, I just loved it, and fostered that as it got more serious towards my teenage years, I guess.
But that power of having someone to look up to in your uncle was so important, clearly, to light that spark in the first place. And I think that's so important for the younger generation to have a role model and someone to be inspired by before they take that first step. And I imagine now, as Apollo in the Gladiators, the face of one of the biggest TV shows in the country, you probably feel that responsibility more than ever. Have you noticed a change in how the younger generation interacts with you and potentially that impact you're having in real time?
Yeah, and I think I take a lot of pride in it. I think it probably wasn't something, the social impact that we've had on this show and as an individual, I didn't realise it was going to be so big. Yeah, becoming a gladiator, I watched it as a kid, so I saw the bright lights, the flashy costume, the being able to, beat up your local butcher, driving instructor, teacher, whatever, on live television. I didn't quite realise how much of an impact we could have on the younger generation. And I now feel like that is probably the biggest part of what we do. We want to set an example for those that whatever they're not a product of their circumstance. Across our group, we've got people from every demographic, every part of the country, right? So we hope that there's someone that everyone can relate to. And I think carrying the flag for that, for a lot of the values that you see it a lot in sport, but maybe it's being lost a little bit in daily life. That ambition, that ability to work hard, work as a team, to handle adversity when you get knocked down. You see the contenders are a good enough example of that. They come in and get beat down, but they get up every single time. And I think I was quoted on the show saying, for the people at home that might be down and out right now, if you can look up, you can get up, and then you never give up. So I think that's kind of what we're trying to do on that show. That's definitely something I'm trying to embody by giving my all on the show. I hope people see that during the games. I do take it really seriously. I train really hard for it to try and be the best example I can for the kids out there. That
quote there, if you don't mind me saying, Apollo is a character which you play wonderfully. Is that the right term? But that quote as if it's from you, if it's from Alex, because it's a quote you've lived. Like you said, transitioning from rugby to American football. When we first met at the Royal Albert Hall, you quite honestly spoke about coming home from American football and transitioning into working into recruitment for time, and then having that breakthrough with Gladiators. Do you believe you actually lived that quote as well? Is that from you, from your heart, not just from the character?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that is definitely a lived experience for me. There's a lot of storms I've had to weather personally through my sporting career, personal life, whatever it might be. And yeah, I would love to, I want to be a walking, talking stack of proof. You know what I mean? I've lived that. There's not a lot. There's a lot I'll say on the show to get a laugh or make someone giggle or whatever it is. But I think there are times when I do want to kind of pull from my own experience. Someone described it to me as putting the heart in heartthrob. Because I've got these kind of two personas going, right? I've got the mum's favourite around on the TV, et cetera, Saturday night special. And then, that motivational piece that, look, I've lived a life of, I haven't just woken up here. I've had 20 years of blood, sweat and tears, and there's been ups, there's been downs. But yeah, using that as a message to the general public. It doesn't have to be a kid either. There's adults all over, up and down the country, all over the world now who are trying to find their way. I think as I've gotten older, I think, we look at our parents, right, and we think they're some sort of magical being that can get nothing wrong. But the older and older you get, you start stepping into their shoes a little bit, and you start thinking, well, they're actually just people trying to figure it all out for the first time as well. So, it's important for me to kind of embody what you were saying there, and get that message across, because that's who I am, and I think there definitely is a crossover between myself and Apollo. Yeah, as I said, I put the flashy stuff on a little bit, but deep down, there's definitely a heroic figure that I would like to portray to the people in the country. Yeah.
Well, that's why I watched the finale of the Gladiators last night, and I saw that when you were being interviewed after each round, and you just thrown people off the top of basically these ropes here and this that. It was incredible. But I did notice when you were speaking, there was a moment where you switched and you spoke from almost the heart, as we said there, about never give up, about courage, about confidence. And just from meeting you that one time at not the Apollo, where was it? The Royal Albert Hall.
Royal Albert Hall, yeah.
Meeting you there, I could tell it was real, and I could tell you lived that off camera too. So I commend you for that.
I appreciate that, and I think everything I do in life, I think I just kind of want to be courageous with it. I think I understand, while I've worked extremely hard, I also understand how lucky I've been. And with the Gladiators, with the NFL, with rugby, as I've gotten older and gone from experience to experience and opportunity to opportunity, I also realize, how many people would love to be a gladiator? I meet a lot of kids, right? We do visits to hospitals, etc. There's a kid in a hospital bed somewhere wishing they were a gladiator, you know what I mean? Or wishing they could just get out of hospital for the day. So who am I to kind of squander that and not give it my absolute best, And we are surrounded, and I am surrounded by, amazing people on this show, not just the Gladiators, but again, mentioning the contenders who come on because they're up against it and they want to prove something, and they've got a family sat in the audience that they want to inspire. Most of them have got little kids, or they come from a community where they coach people, or they teach at a school, and there's people that they can have an impact on with their actions, right? So I just love being part of that show, and I don't take it lightly, and it's just a huge opportunity to kind of inspire a younger generation for sure, but anyone who wants to tune in.
Can you take us to a moment that you're comfortable to share where you did have to go through a moment of adversity and fight, shall we say, and then you had that turning point almost to learn these values, to learn about the never give up attitude, the courage, everything else? Is there a moment that stands out to you from your sporting career or from the moment in recruitment or whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, the recruitment, that was something. Look, one of the big stamps in my kind of journey was I actually missed out on the Olympics in 2016. Rugby Sevens had just been put in. I was player of the year before. And didn't get selected. I picked up an injury in the warm-up tournaments prior, and that hampered me and didn't get to go. But for me, I felt like I should have been on that plane, and it was funny how it was set up. So we did 3 tournaments. We did 4 tournaments. I got injured in the second. I missed the third. The team was selected on the Monday after the third tournament, and then we had a 4th tournament that the team were going to play, and so they split us up into 2 teams. And I was speaking to the coach, and the physios were around. They said, "Look, if you don't want to play in the 4th tournament, that's absolutely fine." Because I'd signed a deal for another team away from the England Sevens team for the next season. And I just looked him dead in the eye, and I said, "Absolutely not. I'm going to show you made a huge mistake." And I went out there and played some of the best rugby I'd ever played in my entire life. Tore the whole thing up, and I had players come up to me saying, "Yeah, you made your point." And I think that was while that was incredibly painful for me to put 4 years of my life into that, and look, it was going to be a huge moment for me and my family. They were going to come out to Rio and watch. I'd got tickets. I'd gone through like the public portal to get tickets for everybody, etc., etc. And they were going to come out, my mum, my 2 brothers, to watch. And we were going to have this huge family event that, hey, look, we've made it, but we've done all right. You know what I mean? So for that not to happen and that not to come to fruition was heartbreaking. But then for me to show up and prove to myself, not to anybody else, but to prove to myself kind of who I am and what I'm about, was one of the most powerful moments in my career from whatever I've done. Never mind anything I've achieved or won or any accolade or medal around my neck. Just that huge momentous moment of me just showing up for myself when I was given every right to be dejected and step aside and go and get on with my life. That's probably one that sticks in my memory for sure. But there's been so many. I mean, even in the NFL, like day to day, imagine. It's hard to really, if you've not been there and done it, it's very, very hard to like describe to someone. I'd never been to an American football game before I played against the Miami Dolphins. So I just imagine someone rocking up to, Man City, the Etihad Stadium tomorrow, and then going and playing. You get 6 weeks of training with them, and then you go and get to play with Man City, right? In front of 40,000 people. That's kind of what it was like. So I stepped into that. When I joined my team, the Atlanta Falcons, I was probably the worst player in the NFL. Like, probably, you know what I mean?
Because you hadn't played.
I'd never played.
There's a misconception that they're very similar sports because you're chasing, a similar shaped ball and you're trying to achieve the same goal. But actually, they're totally different tactics, different rules, different sports. And if to paint the picture for those listening that don't know your story, you had never played American football before going out there. And you're one of the very first players to make that transition from rugby in the UK to professional NFL. Yeah.
So I mean, every single day was littered with self-doubt, with mistakes, with why am I doing this? What have I? Why? And I think it's just day after day. So that wasn't a one big moment of resilience. It was a day after day after day. Just keep showing up. Because I knew there's no higher echelon than the NFL, right? When it comes to sport, you're at the very top. When you're in the building, you want for nothing. You know, you got nutritionists and trainers and kit man who are just handing you free kit the entire time, and the level of detail that goes into the actual sport is incredible. And I remember having, I think in my second training camp, I couldn't catch a cold. I was messing up plays left, right, and centre. I got screamed at by my coach on the side. He was literally screaming at me. I could see, the blood vessels in his face almost bursting. And for a second I was sort of like, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? But you just got to regroup. And I think one thing sport has really taught me, and going through, and also me willing to put myself in those positions, is you end up becoming comfortable being uncomfortable, which is a big secret to, I think, success anywhere. You kind of, if you're not getting butterflies and you're not finding it a little difficult and it's not a little hard, you're definitely not challenging yourself, and you're not right. If you're wanting to grow, you're not in the right place. I think growth comes from putting yourself out there and not knowing if when you take that step, you're going to land. You know what I mean? But it's also about believing in yourself. There's a great saying, a bird doesn't believe in the branch it's standing on, it believes in its wings. And I think that's ultimately what it comes back to. You've got to believe in yourself, and that you're going to give it your best. So, that's two contrasting elements here. The 2016 missing out on the Olympics was one big hit of disappointment that I had, one opportunity to kind of prove to myself. Whereas the NFL was like day after day. I just had to stack these days to prove to myself that, what, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to throw it in. I'm going to learn. I'm going to do my best. And maybe success for me looks a little different to everyone else here, right? These guys have played since they were a 6-year-old. So I kind of taught me how to just turn up and hustle, but also kind of internalize what success was looking like in not comparing it to somebody else's, right? Was my ultimate goal to win a Super Bowl? Well, yeah, that would have been nice, but ultimately I just wanted to have this experience where my back was against the wall against some of the best athletes in the world. And can I prove to myself like who I was, I think. And the first game I played against the Miami Dolphins, that came a year to the day after the guys who went to the Olympics in 2016 and won a silver medal. So it was just, it was kind of an incredible turn of events, and it was an amazing time. And then, this is what I'm saying. If you look at my highlights reel or my Wikipedia page, all you see is these dots of he's done this, he's done this, he's done this. I think the thing that set it off for me, we spoke about my uncle, who was like a clear kind of North Star, kind of who I wanted to emulate, what I wanted to become. Sparked my interest in sport. We lost him to leukemia when I was 13 years old, which was really tough for the family because he was kind of a centerpiece, you know what I mean, to the family. And we ended up losing him after he got testicular cancer. He beat that, got leukemia, and then ultimately couldn't fight that off. And I remember I was like 13 years old, and then he passes away in December. His dad, my granddad, passes away in January from a heart attack, which you think it's trauma-induced kind of heartbreak a little bit. So I'm sat there as a 14-year-old and I'm thinking, wow, what do we do now? And I kind of felt the responsibility of, okay, I'm going to shoulder this and I'm going to do something that we can all be proud of, that this family can rally around. And that kind of sparked my, I don't know if it's competitiveness, but a year and a half later, I was captaining England under 16s rugby team. And I think that's kind of where it started, And while it's, you never wish for those moments for anyone, and definitely for myself and my family, I used it. It was fuel, the intensity that I had after that probably wasn't the same as a regular 13, 14-year-old. I kind of knew where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And I think from that moment, I've been very conscious of how finite this time on earth is. And throughout whatever I've done, whether it's playing rugby for England, whether it's going to the NFL, becoming a gladiator, I'm not going to waste a second. And I think that's ultimately what drives me, is that perspective of knowing that at any point this can go. Because my uncle passed away when he was 33, wow. Which, I'm 34 now, and I did a post out on Instagram. It was my birthday at 33, because I always said to myself, if I only ever got 33 years on this earth, how am I going to make the absolute most of it? And I can honestly say that I think I have. There's not much else I really could have done that was in my power, So, I'm super proud of being able to deal with adversity like that and to use that. And, I'm sure looking down, they'd be pretty proud of what what we've been able to do. So
absolutely, no doubt.
It's just been a crazy ride, and I kind of feel like it's only going to get crazier. But that's what I'm here for. I love it. I love stepping into the unknown. I love challenging myself. I think for people at home, take a gamble on yourself, take a risk, go for it. As I said, we never know how long we've got. So don't waste your days, ultimately. So
the standout from Alex's story so far is how often he's had to start again. New sports, new environments, new expectations. And every time it comes back to having strong foundations, the basics you can rely on, no matter what changes around you. And that's something that Bob really aligns with. Bob support this podcast, and they're all about getting the everyday essentials right. It's a refillable body wash for men designed to keep things simple and consistent. You've got a reusable applicator, you drop a Bob bar in, and it gives you the right amount every time. No mess, no waste, no overthinking it. The bars are designed to properly clean and care for your skin, and it works just as well at home as it does when you're traveling, which makes it easy to stick to routine wherever you are. And I think that's the point. When you've got the basics sorted, it frees you up to focus on everything else. To find out more, click the link in the description, and thank you to Bob for supporting If You Can. There's a saying in my world, in the world of adventures and world records, that purpose comes from pain. And the greatest adventurers, or often many of the greatest, have been inspired by potentially losing someone, potentially a personal battle they've been through with their health, whatever it may be. I was inspired by my granddad. That's how my whole journey started too. Does that still motivate you today? Or what's Alex's greatest driver right now as a gladiator?
It's a tough one. I think, you can't shake those things that have, that pain, anger, pain, frustration. That is a very volatile fuel. That'll take you a long way. You know what I mean? Will it take you all the way? I'm not sure. I think for me now, I'm trying to discover because I've stepped away from professional sport, where you're almost, you're a modern day warrior. You are a modern day gladiator, right? Where you're battling hand-to-hand combat, especially in the contact sports that I played. You're in hand-to-hand combat with other human beings every week. So it's very tribal. It's very, it's a tough world to live in. So you need to use whatever fuel you can. And the fuel of disappointment, the fuel of loss, the fuel of, rejection, anything it is, you can use that, and you should use that to push you forward. But I don't think it's something you can sustain if happiness is something that you want to also have in your life. I think for a long time, I wanted to climb mountains so that the world could see me, but I'm now stepping into an era of my life where I want to climb mountains so I can see the world a little bit, and I think you're probably like that, being an adventurer yourself, right? So for me, it's also a case of, it's not quite what you get in this world, but also what can you give. And I'm very conscious of the platform I have, worked very hard for, but also been given, that I do something positive with that. Part of that is showing up as Apollo on Saturday nights and making people laugh. And I've always said, the things I want to do is, put a dream in someone's mind, stars in someone's eyes, a smile on someone's face, and fire in someone's heart. And that's kind of what I want to do with the Gladiators, whatever form that takes, whether it is on the Saturday night where you tune in and you have a great time, or it's a motivational speech that you see on there, or maybe we come down to your school and we see you there and can inspire you there, or maybe it's passing in the street. Because I meet a lot of families and kids who they see you in your normal clothes walking in the street, and they can't quite believe what they're seeing. It's like Superman's just touched down on Earth, right? So that effect isn't lost on me. So I think turning up to those moments is also very important, because that might be, I think it was Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant said it, there's always going to be someone sat in that stand that has come to see you, and this might be the only opportunity that they ever get to experience you, right? So I'm very conscious of making the most of those moments, and just trying to share what special opportunity and experience this is for me with other people, I think.
Well, it's a team effort, as you said, in many ways, but you have inspired millions. And like you said, whether it's the younger generation or any generation. I loved your quote there on the mountains. I also believe that once you achieve a summit of a mountain, I like to think it's not just your opportunity to come down and then you're finished climbing, but actually it's your opportunity when you're at the top to look at the rest of the mountain range, and you can chase your other dreams. Do you think the motivation of achieving your success in the rugby and then the football, American football, gave you confidence almost then to chase that next dream in the Gladiators? Or do you feel actually there's a balance of almost, well, I've done that, now I need to make sure I don't, let myself down or anyone else down? It's almost, are you chasing the dream, or you are chasing avoiding failure? What is it you're chasing?
Yeah, very good question. I think I've definitely seen both throughout my career appear, maybe even in equal measure, but I think if you want to get anywhere in life, I think it's super important to have something that pulls you, but I think it's also very helpful to have something that pushes you. And that's, I think, if I look back at my own story, that's something that's probably been very present. I've always had this want to make the absolute most of the time I've got on this earth and to achieve what I can, and why not dream and go after it. But I've also had the disappointments, the heartbreaks, the losses that inspire you and push you on as well. So getting a pull and getting a push are probably the two best ways to get to where you want to go, right? So right now, I'll never be able to lose it. I still remember the people who didn't pick me. I still remember the moments that I was left out. I still remember the moments of loss, of feeling lost. But I also remember the good times as well. And I also remember what I am capable of. And I gently remind myself of what I've done sometimes, whenever you do start to feel a little bit nervous or a little bit shaky about certain opportunities, to remind yourself just exactly who you are. And I think that's also the compounding effect of turning up is, you look back and you've got this undeniable stack of proof of what you've done and who you are. Mm-hmm. And that's something I lean on heavily, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever I go into now, it's like, well, you want me to step on stage and speak in front of 5,000 people? That's fine. I turned up in front of 40,000, not with pads and helmets on, not knowing anything, and went out there and ran into some of the best athletes in the world. So yeah, I am still driven. I am still ambitious. I think I always will want to be, whatever form that takes. I am trying to rediscover that a little bit now because, I'm not necessarily fighting week in, week out for a job. Rugby was tough like that, but the NFL was even harder. You used to have to turn up every day with your job on the line, basically. And I saw that, right? I saw guys, because in American football, you're on a day-to-day rolling contract, basically. So I saw that, guys you go to breakfast with, you're having a conversation with them, how's your family, how's the new house you just bought? By lunchtime, someone else is sat in their spot, and they've gone and they're off to another team, or they've been cut, they don't have a job anymore. So I'm not trying to separate myself from that world into this new world of entertainment, and it has been tricky not to quite have that same dogged mindset and to experience this and learn about this new world that I'm in is different, because the two worlds, while there are some things you can take, you can't apply everything. You can't apply everything. So yeah, still staying ambitious. What form that might take, I feel like we spoke about the mountains before. For me personally, I feel like I'm kind of now stood at the bottom of the mountain again, where I'm looking up and there's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 different routes that I can take up, where I can't quite see past 300 feet or 400 feet. But there's something behind it. I don't know what it is, but for me, it's it's putting one foot in front of the other and kind of seeing what comes up and doing my best with everything that comes along, I think.
But like you said, you can stand at the bottom of this next mountain with that undeniable truth that you've achieved what you wanted to before. And I always say, when I'm lucky to visit schools or speak to people, confidence comes from experience, and with confidence comes ability. And the hardest thing is starting. It's taking that first step to grow that confidence and that experience in the first place. Can you take us to the moments of the unknown of stepping into Gladiators for the first time, that breakthrough moment where you did decide to transition through? Because I imagine transitioning from rugby to American football was difficult, but then this is a totally different world, stepping into TV and entertainment and, really changing everything. Can you take us to that unknown and how you got through that? What the hardest moments were?
Yeah, I'll take you back to, so I'd come back from the NFL and I'd started playing rugby again. And I was in rugby post-COVID, so there was not a lot of money in the game. I was kind of going from short-term deal to short-term deal. When I kind of got a call from an agent of mine that said, "Hey, look, there's this TV show, this production company who are trying to get this TV show going. At the minute, they're calling it Superhumans," which at the time I thought, that's definitely right up my street. They've got the right person here. It's going to be a lot like Gladiators, but they're just working things out right now. So do you want to do an audition tape? Well, it's not something I've ever done before, right? So again, that's another example of getting out your comfort zone, putting this camera in front of your face. At the time, I wasn't really using social media. I don't use it a huge amount now anyway, right? But it was it was another step in. This is something I've never had to do before, like a self-tape audition, basically. And I tried to do my best with it, tried to show a lot of character and put a couple of jokes in there, etc., and sent it off. They basically came back and said, "Hey, we like it. Come down and do some like on-screen like workout, like tryouts, basically." So I did that as well. And they said, and that's at that point they told me, "We're actually trying to bring back Gladiators." And I thought, wow, well, I used to watch that as a kid. That's a huge opportunity. I have no idea what's going to happen in the next couple of months, etc., with this opportunity. So I kind of in my mind was like, well, I can't, if I want to do this, I can't go back to rugby. I might get injured, might not be available for, the next round of auditions or whatever is going to happen. So for what I'd done for whoever I was and what I'd done for the past 15 years, 20 years, I kind of had to say, okay, I might be leaving you behind here. We're going to try and we're going to go for something new.
Was that scary?
It was scary, but I think something what helped me, again, the NFL experience really helped me with this. Going from what I was a rugby player from the age of 6, and I was always the best player, and everyone knew me for that as Alex Gray, the rugby player, etc. So to go from that to the NFL, I think kind of set me up really well, because I think what the NFL did for me at that time in my life was it kind of proved to me the difference between what I was and who I was, and that's something I've tried to stick with me. I was Alex Gray, the rugby player. I was Alex Gray, the NFL player. I am Alex Gray, the Gladiator, but who I am is a hardworking, courageous, ambitious person who will always try his best. And that's kind of how I thought about it. But I think you've always, you've got to take a gamble on yourself at some point. And I thought, well, all right, if they're bringing back Gladiators, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? You know what I mean? So I said, I'm going to take a gamble on myself here in this opportunity. So I left the rugby behind. I got a job in the corporate world doing recruitment for what turned out to be a year and a half, which was a long year and a half being sat behind a desk hoping the TV thing was going to pay off. Mm-hmm. But again, I had to stay in shape. I didn't know when the next audition was. I had to train like a full-time athlete, work a full-time job, be conscious of what this world might look like. And that period went for about maybe a year and a half. And then we got the green light. We're doing it. There's going to be one more tryout with yourself and a bunch of others to see who's going to be on the show. And thankfully did really well there. And I think after that point, it was like 6 weeks and then we filmed the show. So I had to gamble on myself again. But glad I did and have kind of ran with it. So it's been great.
But a year and a half, you talk about that almost lightly, like, a year and a half I had to train every day like an athlete, also worked this job, which I imagine you didn't enjoy. It wasn't filling your purpose as you would have liked. That's a long time, a year and a half. How did you actually get through that? How do you turn up every day when you're not even sure that the answer is on the other side? Like you said, you still had to get through rounds of auditions. There wasn't that green light. You were almost a year and a half on amber. How did you get through every single day?
It was super tough. And, it was, I think it was ultimately trying to take one day at a time. Yeah. I did what I had to. At times, a lot of times you want to do what you want, but sometimes you do what you have to. Mm-hmm. And that was just what it was. There's people in circumstances like that all up and down the country that are having to do that just to make ends meet and get by and live their life. And that's just kind of what it was for me. There was something that I thought was worth sacrificing for and taking the punt on and giving that a shot. Because ultimately for me, if I tried and I failed, I'm okay with that. The bit that I couldn't live with, that really gets to me, is never trying and not knowing. I always want to take a shot. If I miss, I miss. At least I know. You know what I mean? That's kind of that's all. That'll always be my mentality with most things in life. And that was the same. Being a gladiator, I watched that as a kid, so I kind of knew how big a deal it could have been. But again, it was who knows? That's kind of what we were getting. We don't know if the BBC are going to take it. Why has it not come back for the past 20 years? Why are we making it now? But luckily, a few stars aligned. And don't get me wrong, that is. I would hate for people to listen to me speak and think that it's all on me. You know what I mean? It's, I've turned up and done the work. Opportunity plays a massive part. I think the only thing you can ever really be is ready to take an opportunity. And and be ready for when you knock on a door and it opens slightly, is to go and kick that thing down. And I think that's because you just never know when they're going to come. And that whole period for me it was a year and a half. I didn't know when the phone call was coming. I didn't know when the next audition was coming, but I just knew I would stay ready. I was starting to practice things in the mirror, like my speeches and my like poetry in quotation marks, and staying healthy, staying fit, still training like a full-time athlete while trying to keep the lights on, So yeah, it was a stressful period, and a period that I'd never had to go through before, because there was just so much unknown, right? Stepping into that, and with you don't even know if this thing's going to materialize at the end. But thankfully it did, and we've been off to the races ever since. So yeah, another prime example of kind of gambling on yourself paying off, I guess.
Self-belief must come first. And I heard you say a quote, the best ability is availability, which I thought was brilliant. Can you take us to that first day turning up at, I imagine, the rehearsals for Gladiators, and how you grew from day one to now just finishing the 3rd season? What was the transition? What were the values? Was it, I imagine, the values you spoke about, but what really stood out to you in the 3 years on a personal journey?
Yeah, it's really been a wild journey, both the growth of the show, my growth within it, I guess my growth as a person alongside that as well. Yeah, I mean, turning up, you see, we came up to, and I've played in stadiums. I've played in 80,000 seater stadiums, full to the brim, playing for your country. A huge honor. But what I kind of experienced on the first day of filming with the Gladiators was something I'd never experienced before. There was little kids who hardly knew who you were by the first minute you walk out, but by the end of it, they're screaming your name. It almost, I think we started filming at 10 a.m. the first day. We didn't finish until 11 p.m. that day. All the families and kids were still there, raucous. It was one of the craziest things I'd ever experienced. And then day after day after day, you see more signs popping up. They've got Apollo signs, they've got Bionic signs, they've got Sabre signs. And I think at that point, when it really hit me was when, WWE, I was a big fan of WWE growing up, right? So we got walkout music, and we have to do like a special moves and stuff. And the first time them saying Apollo, and you walk out to your theme music, and the whole crowd just explodes. I'd never ever experienced anything like that before. And that felt like true showbiz, baby. I'm not gonna lie. So that was a very cool moment. I think from then I knew this is going to be a wild ride. But even for me as Apollo, going in this kind of this transcendence that I think I'm always looking for with opportunity to opportunity. It took a little bit of time to work out. I came into the show, I always knew I was going to be really good at the games. Like, that's what they'd got me for. I played rugby, I'd played in the NFL, I was pretty much a gladiator anyway, right? So I knew I was going to be good at the games. But the actual entertainment side of it was completely new to me. And how do I embrace that? And it probably took me till about halfway through season 1, where for the first half of the season, I was kind of doing the very classic sports guy, girl interview. How did that go for you? Yeah, it was really good. They played well. We got a little lucky today. On to the next one. You kind of, that kind of vibe. And I thought, I'm about to be on TV in front of 10 million people. I am capable and willing to do more than this. So I think that's kind of where I started to try and mold like the Apollo character, kind of like the handsome hero of Saturday night TV, where, he is inspirational, but he also likes to have a laugh and flirt with the mums in the crowd and all that type of stuff, right? So it probably took me half a season to really kind of get into that. And then I had a bit of a period, we did season 1, a wild time. And then I thought, well, how do I keep getting better at this? How do I keep getting better? How do I keep getting better? And I just went to work. I think a lot about how I present myself on that show. Some of the lines that I want to say, material. Coming up with material for a show, that's not something I've ever had to do before, right? Coming up with lines and ideas and running it past production. Can we get this on a wide shot? Can we get this on a close up? How is this going to look best? What do you think? So being part of that kind of creative process has been really cool. And I must have done something right, because we've seen Gladiators pop up in different, countries doing their own shows, and the Americans have copied Apollo, the French have copied Apollo, the Germans have copied Apollo. They're all looking for their Apollo now, because Apollo, while it was me and it was a character, he wasn't really a character before I got hold of him. So that's also something I'm pretty proud of, is being able to grow that, continue to grow it and mold it to try and, make him the best conduit for the messaging and the entertainment that that we want for the show and for people out there. So it's been honestly been a wild ride, and we're still going, we're still growing, and I think that for me is that continual want to improve. You know, I want to do this for as long as I can, or until the wheels come off and they stop the show. You know, so I think it's important for me to year after year get better, keep getting better, whether that's at the games, whether it's with my on-camera skills, whether it's the messaging I want to put out there. It's just super important for me to just keep getting better and keep improving, I think.
I think your journey is so exciting, and I think there's still so much more to come. And I think you've inspired millions as Apollo, but this conversation has epitomised why you're going to inspire millions as Alex Gray, because I think the values you stand for are those I resonate with. So I want to say thank you for coming on the show. Let's finish with this. We spoke about the mountains analogy. We spoke about potentially a fourth mountain now you're embarking on. If you can dream of that next summit, what would it be?
I mean, I am a dreamer. I think I enjoy the entertainment world, I think. Like I enjoy being able to embody like a movement that moves people, you know, that makes people feel a certain way, whether it is inspiration to get in the gym, whether it is a feeling like being able to invoke emotion in somebody is super cool. For me, you know, acting, maybe, I think. How do I keep developing myself as a performer now? You know, I kind of feel like sport is maybe that was gone. So now it's kind of rediscovering like who Alex is, you know, without all of that. What does he want to do? Acting, singing is another one. I'll be performing in some way. I just don't know what form that might be yet. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, as this episode's out, you started teasing the song, I believe, this week, right? So we can mention that, so people should go and check out all of your social media and all your pages. I want to say thank you. I'm so happy that our mandate at the Royal Albert Hall, watching Cirque du Soleil, again, thank you to Matt, has transitioned into having you on the show. So thank you for your time. We wish you all the very best for that next mountain.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hi everyone, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of If You Can with the one and only Alex Gray, aka Apollo. Alex was brilliant for many reasons. He has that ability to take risks, to take leaps, which he's clearly done in his career and as he shared during this conversation. And I admire him for many reasons. He's clearly achieving great success too at the moment with Gladiators, which is one of the biggest shows right now in the country. So we really do wish him all the best If You Can. And actually we went for lunch afterwards too with our teams, and he was just as kind off camera too. So thank you, Alex. Thank you to your team too for joining us on If You Can. But of course, we can't finish any episode without Bob's Everyday Hero, our weekly segment to finish the show where we give a shout out and a thank you and a big well done to one of you, to one of our If You Can listeners who's achieved something amazing recently. Big or small, a personal goal, a work goal. Maybe it's a moment of kindness. You can nominate yourself, a friend, a family member, a colleague, anyone. You just have to drop us an email at louis@ifyoucanhq.com. That's louis@ifyoucanhq.com. And each week we go through the emails, pick someone out, we read out your story, and we send out a Bob Shower pack to support you on your own journey. And this week's email comes from Charlie, and I'm going to read his email to you now. Hi Louis, after listening to your conversation this week, it made me think of someone I work with called Chris. He's not a tailor, but he takes the same kind of pride in what he does. He works in maintenance, and no matter how small the job is, he'll take his time to do it properly, even if no one else would notice the difference. I think in a world where everything feels fast and disposable, there's something really impressive about people who still care about doing things well. He's been like that for years, and he never really gets recognised for it, but I know it makes a big difference to everyone around him. Thought he deserved a shout out. Thank you, Charlie. Charlie, well, first of all, thank you for sending us an email. You're absolutely right. Your friend and colleague, Chris, definitely deserves a shout out. And you're right, we live in a world now where we share so much of what we do, or many of us do at least. And really, who are we in those moments when no one's watching, when no one will find out what we've done? Do you still turn up and do the things you need to do? Do you have that pride and that personal responsibility to still turn up and deliver on your word? And Chris clearly sounds like one of those people. So thank you for what you do. We're going to send you both out a Bob Shower pack to support you on your own journeys. And thank you, of course, for supporting If You Can. To everyone else who's listening, please do remember to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, subscribe on YouTube. We're also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in fact, we're starting to upload the video format on Spotify too, which is exciting. And your support means the world. It allows us to continue delivering great guests with even greater lessons to continue this mission of If You Can.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week for the next episode of If You Can. Bye now.